Hi everyone, welcome to the Parrot Teacher. I'm David and today's video is going to be all about should your parrots be allowed on the floor. I'm going to talk a little bit about them being on the floor of the cage, but mostly about them being out and about in the house because there's a lot more that needs to be talked about on that topic. I'm going to talk about the reasons why yes, it'll be a great idea to have your parrots on the floor, and then some of the reasons why you shouldn't, and some of the dangers to avoid, and finally a few safety tips if you do intend to let your parrots roam around on the floor, just so everything's nice and safe for them. I thought I'd start with the positives and the reasons why your parrot should be allowed on the floor and the good things about it. It is really good for their exercise. It exercises their little feet. I'll put a little clip after this of the cockatiels running around on the floor, and you can see just how quickly their feet have to move. It's good for confidence building because they get used to exploring lots of different areas and just generally being a bit more confident. And it's just another way of adding diversity and breaking up their day and making it lots of fun for them. So the circumstances you want your parrot to be on the floor ideally are if you have a bird room or aviary, there's absolutely no reason they can't be on the floor in that as long as it's kept mostly clean and there's nothing dangerous down there on the bottom for them. A bird room or aviary is absolutely ideal because you know that they're going to be able to explore the floor safely and securely. The floor of the cage is another great way you can get your parrots exploring the floor. It may not be the floor outside, but the floor of the cage, especially with substrate, is a lot of fun for them and it encourages them to use the whole cage and enjoy all aspects of it. It encourages foraging and independence as well in the cage, which I know is important to a lot of you. Some people say that substrate on the floor of the cage may not be ideal. I've got a video all about substrate which I'll leave a card for now, and that covers most of the topics you need to know on that. Another circumstance it's ideal for your parrots to be on the floor in the room or outside and about is when they're properly supervised. Our parrots are allowed on the floor and we supervise them whenever they are on the floor because we don't want any accidents or anything untoward happening to them. So if they are on the floor and you're watching them and you're providing activities such as a foraging tray or toys, it's completely fine to have them on the floor. Another reason to allow your parrots on the floor is kind of a natural behaviour. Most parrots will spend a lot of time in the trees, but many will come down to forage, and for some it is part of their natural behaviour and something they do regularly. They will go onto the floor, forage for various things, for water for example, or for various snacks, and it's just a completely natural thing for them to do. So replicating that in a captive environment is also good for them in that respect because they're just replicating what they do out in the wild. Now we've covered some of the sort of circumstances it's good to have your parrots roaming around on the floor. I want to talk about some of the dangers and then some safety tips with regards to the topic. And the first one is if you have cats, dogs or small children, it is not ideal to let your parrots on the floor. I know a lot of people see lots of cute videos with cats and dogs interacting with parrots and a lot of them are staged. There's also a lot of videos and there's a lot of stories we hear of the opposite, and you don't want that sort of accident happening. You don't want your little toddler accidentally stomping on your little parrot. You don't want your dog or cat accidentally attacking them or something untoward happening to them. It's just not ideal for them. There are tons of horror stories of interactions, and especially if you have small birds, it's even more dangerous. If you have a larger parrot, even then I wouldn't recommend it, but that's down to your discretion because you know your parrot best and you're the one that's going to have to deal with any fallout if anything happens. Another circumstance it's not ideal to have parrots roaming around on the floor is if they're unsupervised, and that kind of ties into the last point. If you're not supervising them when they're on the floor and they're just roaming around throughout the house, it can be a danger for them because, for example, if you're just coming out of the kitchen, maybe you forgot something, you're rushing, you could end up accidentally stomping them, they could fly off in a panic, all sorts of things could happen. So it's best to at least have someone in the room who can keep an eye on them and make sure everything's okay. The exception to this would be a parrot room or bird room or an aviary because they're in an enclosed space and ideally it's been made bird safe so they won't have those same dangers. This kind of ties into my previous point. If you have dangers in the room that they're going to be exploring the floor of, that's not ideal. Now this can be mitigated somewhat with a bit of supervision. but you need to be very cautious of dangers. This could be messes, spills, it could be plastic on the floor, it could be chewable, it could be exposed wires, it could even be plants that are toxic to them. It's just something you need to be aware of if you're going to be allowing your parrots on the floor, that these dangers could present a risk to them, and you may want to keep them away or potentially move them and hide them if possible. This is an advisory if you have carpet. If you notice your parrot chewing carpet fibres, that is a big no-no. If you notice them doing this, you want to keep them off the floor or closely supervise them, because obviously there's a risk of crop impaction or all sorts of other nasty things. None of our parrots do chew carpet fibres, so they're completely fine on them. However, your parrot may be different, so it's something to be very aware of, and it can present a danger to your parrots. Now, the final danger I want to talk about before I move on to safety tips with them being on the floor is if your parrot's not step-up trained, or if there's loads of nooks and crannies they can go and hide behind. First, if they're not step-up trained, you're not going to be able to retrieve them if you need to, so that's something that's really useful. And secondly, if they can go behind things, there's two risks for that. One, they could become stuck, or if they get spooked, they could flap and hurt themselves. And secondly, it could be a hormonal issue. They could go into these nesting spaces and it could cause hormone problems for you. So it's ideal to try and keep them away from these little areas, and also make sure they are step-up trained before you let them roam around. But just to go over a few safety tips when your parrots are out and about and you're letting them roam around on the floor, make sure you communicate with others in the household. For example, if I am in the bedroom and Sophie's got the birds out, she'll let me know what's going on if they're on the floor, so I don't come rampaging in and accidentally step on them. It's the same when you have windows, etc. It's always good to maintain a line of communication with everyone else in the house so everyone knows what's going on. It really does help to avoid accidents. The next thing you can do if you want your parrots on the floor and you have dogs and cats and maybe children is, again, maybe just keep the dogs and cats separate. So maybe close the door and let the parrots roam around. Then once they're back in their cage or on a play stand, then allow the animals back in. Similarly with children, awareness is very important. Once they get to a certain age when they are aware and they can be told, you can keep them informed. Otherwise, maybe keeping them separate is best. They sound a bit obvious, but make sure that the floor surface they're going to be on is clean, there's no spills, no messes, nothing that could cause any harm to them on there. And make sure that there's no cleaning products being used recently on the floor as well, because that could present a danger. If you want some bird safe cleaning products you can use on the floor, we'd recommend F10. You can also steam your carpet with just plain water, or you can use Poop Off. Now, I have F10 and Poop Off in my Amazon store, and you can just check it out. There'll be a link in the description so you can see what they're like. So guys, thank you very much for watching this video. I hope you found it useful. I hope it sort of cleared up some of the dangers and some of the great circumstances of parrots being on the floor. If you have any questions, please feel free to leave them down below. But in the meantime, take care and have a really good day.